How freezing cold or scorching hot does Burlington, Ontario get? Well, in today's video, we're going to be covering the average temperature year-round, as well as precipitation, humidity, and more, so you know exactly what to expect when living in Burlington, Ontario. So one of the main reasons I love living in Burlington happens to be the location, as not only is it just a short drive away to Toronto or Niagara Falls, but because where it's located on Lake Ontario, it capitalizes on the lake effect during the winter months. So really, if we look at this graph here, we can see where the snow belts are located throughout Ontario and around the Great Lakes. Now, typically what the lake effect is, if you don't know it, is basically just cold Arctic air coming down from up north, hitting the relatively warm, wet air over the Great Lakes, causing a lot of snow. Now, thankfully, because where Burlington is located, it's on the right side of the lake, in my opinion, with less snowfall and milder temperatures throughout the winter months. So then how hot and cold does it get in Burlington? Well, as we can see on this graph here is the average temperature year around, with the warm season lasting 3.6 months, starting in June 1st and ending in September 18th, with the daily average above 20 degrees Celsius. And then the cold season only lasts 3.4 months, between December 3rd to March 15th, with the daily average being about 4 degrees Celsius. However, on those colder months like January and February, you can see an average of about -4 and -5. And on this chart here, we can see the average hourly temperature in Burlington for each of the months. Now notice in this chart here, it really presents also the lake effect, as we never have those extreme temperatures with those frigid areas in the wintertime, or those hot or sweltering areas in the summer. Now, while we don't have those hot scorching days, we definitely do have some humidity in the summer months, especially around July and August, where that humidity can make those hot, humid days a little bit more uncomfortable. So while the humidity can be a little bit high in July and August, you won't have to worry much about the UV index, as currently the highest point on the average UV index Burlington sees is 5, which is just on the high side of the moderate UV index. So talking about the sun, it's actually one of my personal favorite things about living in Burlington, as the other week I was out in Vancouver traveling with my family and thought I would absolutely love the Vancouver weather, of that cool climate that's kind of the same thing consistent year round, however a little bit overcast and a little bit rainy. And let me tell you, after only about 10 days in Vancouver, man oh man, did I ever miss the Ontario sun. So in Burlington, you can expect the sunny season to start on May 30th, and it'd be 50% chance clear or mostly clear on the majority of days until October 28th, which is pretty much a 5-month season. And even still, on the cloudier seasons, it's still clear about 40% of the days. So you're definitely gonna get a lot of sunshine when living in Burlington. So with all this little cloud cover, if you're coming from Vancouver, or if you're coming from a sunnier city with all this cloud cover, what can you expect from precipitation? Well, on this graph here, we can see that the highest months of precipitation are in June, with 30% of its days being raining at least 1 millimeter. And then as you can see, while June does get a lot of rain, the highest amount of average rainfall per month happens to be September. So in those rainy months is definitely the best time to grow and tend to your garden. And this is something that I've truly come to appreciate recently, is the growing season in Burlington is about 6 months long. So not the longest compared to some cities you might find elsewhere. However, it really is around that April 21st to October 21st is the total season, with of course the best months being in June to September. And then as for the average amount of snowfall, as you can see, the months that get dumped on the most happen to be usually January and February, with the typical average per month being just over 103 millimeters. So all the data and charts we've looked at this point have all been the historical data of Burlington for the last 30 years. However, when we look around at the climate change, we can understand that that's going to be affecting our climate moving forward for the next 30 years. So then how would the climate change really affect Burlington? Well, thankfully, the city of Burlington and the town of Oakville partnered up and created a study where they have their projections for what the climate's going to be looking at 2051 to 2080 in the Burlington Oakville area. So just a couple things I wanted to point out is, as you can see, they're expecting the average temperature to rise 4 degrees annually, with the hot season almost doubling, with a lot more heat alerts and heat waves. And then as for the precipitation, we definitely can be expecting a heavier amount of precipitation days with increased intensity, duration, and frequency, as well as the winds will start to pick up with a greater chance of freezing rain. So that's what the city of Burlington and the town of Oakville are thinking is going to be the effects on climate change to Burlington's climate. Now, of course, like any city, Burlington, when you're there, are going to have different pockets with slightly different climates. And I know for myself, one of the things I notice about when I'm going down to South Burlington to go see homes or just enjoy the waterfront is typically down there tends to be a bit more damp on those cooler days and windier for sure because you have all the wind coming off Lake Ontario. So if you want to learn more about the differences and similarities of living in North versus South Burlington, the next video I'd recommend you go check out is my video going over exactly that. So I hope you guys have found this video helpful, and until next time, guys.